Hello everybody, I am Yukiro. Welcome back to my channel if you are a returning visitor, and hello if you are not. My name is Yukiro, as my regulars will know, and I was going to record creating a character in Baldur's Gate 3. Unfortunately, every time I try, something decides to go wrong. Last night, the game decided it was going to crash before I had accepted my character. And today, it has decided that Streamlabs was not going to record. Or it did start recording and it decided to crash and stop recording. So I don't think I'll be doing that. Instead, I am going to talk more about Wales, my culture, and some of the do's and don'ts. And just anything and everything to do with Wales. So, if you are not native to the UK, or have not visited, or just don't have a general understanding, the UK is not just England. You have the Scottish, the Irish, the Welsh, as well as the English. Even in Ireland, you have the north and south of Ireland, and only one part of that is technically considered part of Britain, but that's a whole other story, and not one that I am entitled to share. I would recommend looking up the history of Irish, because there's a lot to go over there. So I'll just be speaking on the Welsh side of things. Now, this is going to be valid for everyone other than the English. Especially don't call a Welshman an Englishman. Big no-no. Don't do it. You will get punted in the face, if not yeeted into the sun. Trust me, is a bad idea. So, I can't speak for the Scottish and the Irish especially, but England and Wales do have a long and complicated history, and we Welsh people are Welsh, we are not English. We are a completely separate people. We are actually native to Britain, unlike the English. That's not to say that some English don't have native blood in them, but for the most part they are like the Saxons and the Romans and whatnot, whereas we are not. There are also cultural differences between England and Wales, and although I speak English, our native language is actually Welsh and not English. So similarly as not calling a Welsh person an Englishman, don't call Wales England. We are not part of England. We don't belong to England, although they would like to have you believe that we are. And yeah, we're just not. We are not English. We do not belong to England. We are our own people. We are very different people. We may seem similar to the unknown and to the ignorant, I'm going to say. And it's okay to be ignorant. I mean, I'm ignorant of many things myself. But yeah, we are not the same people. So another thing you'll notice if you ever come to Wales is we're not very urban. Obviously we have our cities as well, but compared to other places such as in England, our cities are relatively small. I think Cardiff would be the biggest of our cities, although we do have other big cities in Wales. We are relatively small, especially when you can compare us to something like London or something. So we do have more wilderness than we do urban. So this is great if you enjoy sort of like mountainous areas for like hiking, biking, and you know, even some beaches. We have some amazing, beautiful beaches here in Wales. But we are mostly known for our countryside, so lots of walking. There was also lots of hills, so if you're anything like I was growing up, and you have asthma or just can't handle a lot of walking, yeah, you're kind of screwed if you come to Wales, because we have a lot of hills and mountains. But if you can get past the lengthy walks, our countryside is the most beautiful. So if you do a lot of hiking, obviously bring hiking boots. Don't make the same mistake I used to and just wear normal trainers. If you're just going for a general walk, there are pathways in the mountains where you can just wear trainers, and it's not so bad. But if you're going like up the Brecon Beacon or any of the other mountains, you will need hiking boots. Okay, so another thing that might even be similar with England and the rest of the UK, but it's especially true here. If you're going to do some shopping, and I don't mean like general food shops, you are probably going to need to do that before 6 p.m. because our shops close like between... It varies. Some months we open a little bit later, but other months we are shut like between 5 and 6, especially on a Sunday. On a Sunday, most shops, even general, food shopping, we shut at 4. So if you ever come to the UK, especially in Wales, and you want to do some food shopping on a Sunday, make sure it is before 4. We used to never open on a Sunday, but then we agreed to open on the Sundays, but we have to shut by 4. So yeah, if you're going to do some shopping, make sure you know what time the stores are shut. Places like Tesco's and Waitrose, Asda, Morrison's, they all have their different closing times. Some are 24/7, apart from obviously on a Sunday, but others will shut earlier than others. So like, let me think. I think Morrison's shuts at 10 or 9. No, 10 I think. Whereas Asda is pretty much open all night. But that's food stores. Obviously if you want clothes stores or other such things, you are going to want to do your shopping early. Now, this is going to sound like I am being a hypocrite because I complain about the weather a lot, but don't complain about the weather. I'll let you that sink in for a minute. Okay, so if you're not aware, the UK is in a little special area where we don't have a lot of heat, I'm going to say. We have obviously summers, which are quite nice, but we also are in a spot where it is just ripe for rain, especially in Wales. So London doesn't see as much rain as us, so we do have a lot of rain. Even in the summer, it rains a lot. Now, I get to get away with complaining about the weather because I live here and I have to deal with it every day, and it's annoying, especially when you want to go outside for a change, especially with the pups. But yeah, we know it rains a lot. It sucks, but trust me, even if it was sunny, you're going to hear complaining anyway from locals because we're just like, ugh, it's too hot, it's the rain. And then it's raining, it's like, ugh, it's too wet, where's the sun? It's just a thing. It's just a thing. Yeah. If you're going to do a lot of driving around Wales to do some sightseeing, I do recommend it because we have some, as I said, beautiful locations, but you may want to get a GPS because, as I've mentioned before, we're not very urban, apart from like in the cities. So you're probably going to get lost a lot, especially during rides through our country lanes. We have a lot of country lanes, so it is easy to get lost. I mean, even for us, because yeah, the lanes are really confusing, and sometimes you're thinking you're going the right way and you've turned yourself around somehow. It's a whole thing. On that note, our country lanes are pretty slim, so you're probably going to want to learn how to navigate such things. So like here, we generally, if we see a car come in, we have to pull it into the side as far as we can, which isn't a lot of room in some places. In other places, they have like the gaps where you can do that. You're also going to notice that lorries and trucks and things do still come through there. Up to a certain size, I don't think they're supposed to, but the smaller ones do, and it can become a whole thing of who's going to let who pass, how can we get past, especially if you've got people behind you, which is a nightmare. But anyway, yeah, just expect that. So if you've got road rage, possibly don't go driving around Wales, because you'll definitely experience a lot of that. Another thing about Wales is, for better or worse, don't expect like consistent mobile service around here. Where I work, it's hit or miss whether or not I get signal for my phone, including the works the internet. I don't know why. Their internet just really sucks. But yeah, mobile service can be hit or miss. You're alright in like the cities. But as soon as you're out in the country, it's sort of like hit or miss whether or not you get signal. So just be forewarned on that. If you're like me, almost can't live without the internet or technology in general, be prepared to be without in certain areas. Okay, so another thing in Wales that you'll see a lot of are pubs. We do like our pubs. Oh, I'm not speaking for myself because I don't really like pubs all that much. Unless it's the daytime when there isn't many people drinking. Just not a fan of drunk people. Anyway, you will need pub etiquette. So obviously once you've chosen a table at the pub, this is different from restaurants, but you will have to note down what table number you're on, so that when you're ordering, you can give that table number to the person taking your order. Depending on the pub, will depend on whether or not you get a waitress or waiter come to take your order. For the most part, they do expect you to like get your table number, get your table, and then order at the bar. In proper restaurants or those that are a mixture between restaurant and pub, you may get a server instead. But it all depends. So just be aware of that if you come here. So keeping on with the pubs, not all pubs are going to allow children after a certain time. I think the cut-off for some of the ones around by me is 9 o'clock. So after 9 o'clock, there are no underage people allowed, but that you can have underage kids in that pub during the day. Now, obviously, we can't serve underage children alcohol. But unlike America, where the age to drink is 21, we are much younger than that. We are 18. There is a task 25, so if you look under the age of 25, you probably are going to get ID'd. But as long as you're over the age of 18, you can drink here. Now, the one thing about Welsh people, we are very, very nice. And we do tend to get really curious about travellers. So if we start striking up conversations, like in the pub or somewhere, don't be afraid to like get to know us. Because I promise you, we might seem scary at times, but we are super friendly. I've mentioned this before, but we do have a wicked sense of humour. So that's a lot of sarcasm, little jabs and jibs at each other. So if you see someone playfully calling someone else a bellend or a knob or something, unless it looks like we're going to actually fight, we're probably just being friendly and just picking on each other in a friendly sort of way. So don't worry about it. We do like picking on each other, but we are very, very friendly. Unless, of course, you call us English. Then we might punch you into the sun, as I've mentioned before. Although the sun might be too good for you. Anyway, if you are visiting the countryside, if you can get to a spot where there isn't much light pollution, make the most of the stars. They are absolutely beautiful. You can still see a few stars from the cities, but it's not going to have the same impact. Okay, so one thing that I will say is probably true for all of the UK, but especially in Wales. Now, I know in America this isn't really a thing, but we do like our queues and our lines. So if you are in a queue, don't skip and try to get in front of anybody. You will be given, at the best, you'll get some harsh looks. At worst, you will be insulted. Your mother will be insulted. And you'll be told to get back at the end of the line. So yeah, don't skip queues. That's a big no-no here. Now, speaking of travelling around, because we got to go back to that, there are a lot of castles in Wales. This is mostly due to the fact that who was it? I want to say it was the English, but it might have been the Romans. Basically, when they tried to take over, they had to build a lot of castles in order to keep out enemy foes. So because of that, we have so many castles in Wales. In fact, there's more castles per square mile in Wales than any other European country. So I highly recommend visiting some castles. I grew up going to Ogmore Castle a lot. It's not a amazing castle. It's literally just a little bit of a ruin along a river, and depending on whether or not the tide's in or out, you can either get across the river easily or not at all. There are stepping stones, but they're kind of... if you've got short legs like me, they're kind of hard to cross. At one point I just decided I was just going to walk through the water and help my nephew across. He was very young then, so how old was he then? I think he was like 5? So I helped him across because the stepping stones can be quite difficult. The water was freezing, by the way. I do not recommend. But yeah. So there are some absolutely amazing castles to visit in Wales. So one thing you'll probably notice about Wales is we are neck deep in sort of like poetry and folk music and dance. This is one of our traditions. I personally don't think I can sing, so I'm not going to give you any examples. But we do have a lot of folklore and tradition here. That's not to say that, you know, England doesn't, but compared to them, we're just better, okay? We're better. We are amazing. So our traditional sport is rugby. I don't personally support any particular team, whether it's football or rugby or any other sports, mostly because I'm not a sporty person. But whenever Wales is playing, I will at least give them some courage and hope that they do their best. Because, you know, it's just part of our culture. So I've gone over one of the Welsh foods here, but not in this video. I won't go over that one again because I can't talk about it without probably getting flack from YouTube. But other traditional Welsh dishes is the Welsh rarebit, lava bread, Welsh cakes, which is making me hungry just thinking about them. They're so good. And cool. There's a few others, but those are some of the main staples, including the one I mentioned in a prior video. So our national day is St. David's Day. Our flower to represent this day is the daffodil. So if you see that being sold anywhere, or even if it's not the flower, but sort of like just the symbol of it, sort of like a pin or whatever, that'll be why, because that is part of St. David's Day. So we do have a few other traditions. Some are more seen than others, but I'll get to the others in a bit. Now, one that you probably all will know, or even if you don't know it, you've at least heard of this, at least this particular dog breed, the Corgi, the Queen's favourite. That dog breed actually originated in Wales. So those cute little bubble butts, they are one of our native dogs. Well, I say native, but you know what I mean. Our national animal of Wales is the Welsh dragon, which, yeah, it's not an animal per se, because it's a fantasy creature, but considering our Welsh flag is a red dragon, we're allowed, okay? So the one thing about the red dragon is its lore. So the red dragon in Welsh is the Idragoch, which is the dragon red, if you were to translate it exactly. I always wondered why like languages were backwards, but I think it's English that is actually backwards. Anywho, so the one thing you'll probably notice between the European dragon and the Asian dragons, especially like the Chinese dragons, they do look a little bit different, and obviously they do act differently. Most European dragons are mostly animalistic and fire-breathing and sort of like dangerous, whereas the Chinese dragons are calmer and usually, you know, not portrayed as beastly. However, the Welsh dragon is, although it is very similar to the European dragons, because it is a European dragon, it actually isn't as violent as some of the others. So our dragon is sort of like a warrior or a leader, and the first known tale of the red dragon was round about 828 AD, and the legend begins with two battling dragons. One was the white dragon and the other the red dragon. King Chlyd had trapped them in Dinas Emrys hill for thousands of years. So one day, King Vortigern decided to construct his new castle on this particular hill. So he didn't know the dragons resided there, and every morning he'd wake up and his castle had been mysteriously destroyed. So he obviously didn't know what was happening or why this was happening to his castle. And so he took advice from his council. So you'll probably recognise this name that I speak in a minute. They instructed him to track down a boy with no father and use him as an offering. So to the king's surprise, the boy he located was a young Merlin. Yes, that Merlin. The most enlightened wizard to ever exist. So Merlin obviously wasn't keen on being sacrificed to keep the king's construction project running smoothly, so he decided to unveil the truth about the two dragons. So the king dug up the hill and released the dragons. So the pair continued their battle until the red dragon was victorious. And then Merlin identified this dragon as a representative of the people of the king. So the white dragon was a representation of the Saxons, and obviously the king's people were the British. And by that I don't mean the English, because they're kind of technically Saxons, but anyway, the native British in this case. And we couldn't be defeated by the Saxons, also he said. So this is how the Welsh people apparently came to be, and why the red dragon is part of our flag. Nowadays it is just pretty much said to just be a representation and not an actual dragon. But I preferred thinking that it was an actual dragon because, I mean, I exist, right? So it has to be out there. Or maybe I am the dragon. I will never tell. Now there's also another tale of a red dragon. It's very similar to the last one I mentioned, but in that tale, the red dragon was slumbering in a cave, and the white dragon came and began sort of like decimating the nearby village or town, and the white dragon layered a huge area of frost so none of the crops could grow, and he was pretty much a horrible dragon to have around. So the people went and woke up the red dragon, and he pretty much came and drove the white dragon away, and peace was restored. Again, I think this is supposed to represent like the English or the Saxons as it were, and the Welsh's ferocity in keeping ourselves free and independent. There's a lot more beyond that, unfortunately, but that's kind of what the dragon means to us. It's a representation of our strong will to not be subservient, I guess. Now, unfortunately, the English really didn't want to let us be. Although I suppose they weren't really the English back then. But for ease's sake, I am going to call them the English. In the past, centuries ago, as you've probably noticed from the Tales of the Dragon, we have been constantly sort of like pushed back by the Saxons, Romans, and all manner of people. After things did settle, and obviously the English became the English, we had a couple of kings that managed to defeat the other king, the English king, and keep our country free. But eventually the English did win at one point, and over the course of many years, we have struggled to keep our history, our culture, our language alive. Okay, so the Welsh also have our own deities, and the original concept for hell, obviously not the hell known today, actually came from one of our gods, Aran, and he was the god of the underworld. Now, the underworld in Welsh mythology isn't like a place where only bad people go, it is where the souls of all people go. Kind of like the underworld of Hades, where all the dead souls of mortals go. I'm not sure if there is any other similarities other than, you know, it being a place where all souls go, but yeah. So it wasn't a place for good or evil. It was just a place where all the souls of the dead go. And Aron was actually a rather benevolent leader there. And at one point, he comes to the mortal world and trades place with one of our people, in order to deal with his rival, Afan. And the two people, him and the person that he trades places with, actually become really good friends, because the person he traded with, and this is going to sound really stupid, but this is how the law goes, but the person he traded with did not sleep with Aron's wife. But during the year that they were, traded places, and because of that, Aron had great respect for that person, and they became really good friends. But yeah, so there are other gods and deities. Some are giants, like literal giants, others not. So there is a vast deity and religion for our culture, and most of that unfortunately was lost. Well, I say lost, or just pretty much not remembered anymore. There are some like scholars and people who do remember. I don't remember everyone, but he was one of my favourites, just because of that really stupid tale. So another of the gods was Bron, blessed. So he was a god of prophecy, art, music, war, writing, all the good things, all the good things. But speaking of poetry, bards in most sort of like fantasy genres are actually sort of based on our bards. Another thing that's usually based on Welsh culture are elves. So you'll probably notice like Arwen from Lord of the Rings is one of the most notable, but even in Dragon Age, as I've mentioned in my Dragon Age videos, their elves are heavily inspired by the Welsh too, including our similarities in having our lore and a culture almost eradicated, but are still trying to fight to keep it. So yeah, every time you see an elf, it is because Tolkien and other fantasy writers just loved our culture so much that they wanted to sort of like try and include it into their writings. And it's not like the English don't have like bards and a deep culture of their own, but nothing can compare to the Celts. We Celts, which is the Scottish, Irish and Welsh, we're just so much better than the English, and that's just fact. Much love, of course, to my English friends. I love you. I wouldn't change you for the world, but you have to admit, we Celts are just superior, okay? Yeah? You understand? Good. So yeah, so going on from having our culture and stuff almost gone. So at one point in the 19th and 20th century, one of the English kings decided he didn't like the Welsh having our own language, and it was highly encouraged to sort of like get rid of it and to try and encourage us not to speak it anymore, especially in schools. So you have something called the Welsh Not, and this was sort of like a sort of like little, well, I say little, rather heavy actually, piece of wood, and this was usually hung around a child's neck, and basically the person at the end of the day who was caught, who was still wearing it, would usually face a punishment, whether that's a spanking with, the big old spanky wooden paddle, or a ruler on the wrists. It not very nice, but yeah, that's part of our history, unfortunately. But basically, it was encouraged that if anyone was caught speaking Welsh, if you had the Welsh Not on your neck, you could grass this person up and have that knot transferred from you to the other person. Pretty barbaric, but hey, that's the English for you. And so yeah, so fortunately, that didn't continue for too long. I say for too long, but you know how it goes with history. So eventually we were able to keep and salvage our language and most of our culture. Obviously, the Christianity decided that we pagan heathens had to conform to their religion, but hey, that's a whole other story. But a lot of the pagan traditions still pretty much like exist today in one form or another, which is why some sects of Christianity won't practice some. Sort of like Halloween, for instance. I believe that was mostly an Irish tradition. We also had our own versions here in Wales, but there was I'm fairly sure Halloween itself sort of originated in Ireland. And obviously you have the Yule tide, which is now known more commonly with Christmas. So obviously you have the Christmas tree and other sort of things that were sort of like moved over to Christianity. This was mostly so that the Christians could say, oh look, we have just similar traditions to you, so you know, you can still do what you're doing, you just have to do it our way, and that way you don't have to like be killed in the name of cleansing the world from you pagan heathens and so forth. So yeah, so that's that. Okay, so we have a tradition mostly in southern Wales, but I'm sure it's happens in other places too. I don't see this often, unfortunately, although I have been tempted just for the lols. But this tradition is called the Married Lloyd, and basically you take a horse's skull. Yes, you've heard me right. A horse's skull, and you mount it on a pole, and then you sort of like put a sheet over where the sort of like the mane would be, and obviously the person then carries that around. You can adorn it with sort of like ribbons and bows and sort of like flowers and things, and basically you have the person control the Married Lloyd, and they go usually from house to house. This is usually sort of like a winter festival sort of thing, and basically you have the Married Lloyd who wants to get into the house so they can partake in the festival, sort of like so drinks, food and whatnot. And basically you have an epic, I'm going to call it a rap battle because that's the closest thing to how to describe it, but obviously it's sort of like rhymes and whatnot, and you've got sort of like if you fail, you have to let the Married Lloyd into the house to enjoy your food and drinks. It's not sort of like a horror thing, it is just literally a sort of like game. It sounds kind of creepy because of obviously the horse skull. You don't have to use a real one, of course, but it was just something that you can do to partake in that. It's a fun little tradition, and maybe I'll go into a little bit more depth, but that's just one of the traditional Welsh traditions here. And obviously if you do end up having the Married Lloyd in your house, you're apparently said to get good luck for the rest of the year, or for the next year, something like that. So it's actually a good thing to let the Married Lloyd into your house. She is also known as kind of mischievous though, so she may chase you in all obviously fun and games. So another Welsh tradition is something we create called a love spoon. You'll probably see these in sort of like traditional Welsh shops that's, you know, cater to Wales and its traditions. They're not spoons you can use for eating. They tend to be made from like clay or wood. They're the most common ones I've seen. But basically they were originally carved for men and gifted to their sweethearts to show a sign of affection. So they are usually very masterfully and intricately crafted with usually little hearts and things. And yeah, so that's another little tradition that we have. So I mentioned earlier that with St. David, you have the his symbol is sort of like the daffodil. But we also have another symbol that represents the Welsh, and that is the leek. For those of you who know what Vocaloid is, obviously the leek was a big part of that there, but obviously there's no real relation between the two. I just thought I'd mention that. But yeah, the leek came actually before the daffodil as one of our representation, and the leek, in my opinion, tastes absolutely amazing. I love the leek, but it is one of those sort of like root vegetables where you either like them or you don't. I personally think they taste amazing, but that's just me. Now, I heard before somewhere on Facebook, someone mentioned that Welsh are apparently olive-skinned. Now, I don't know where that myth originates from. Probably from the Romans, actually, because the Romans are the Romans. But we are, as all Celts, pasty white. There's no way of really saying otherwise. We're not dark skinned, unfortunately, for whoever thought that was true. And that's not to say we won't tan or anything. And we do tend to have a more natural affinity for like brown eyes and brown hair, as opposed to like other Celts who are more known for like paler complexions and whatnot. But we are just as pale. And yeah, we're not olive skinned or brown or anything. Now, obviously, back in the day, Wales was actually known for trade and for allowing like people from all over the world to, well, I say all over the world that could feasibly reach us with the boats and whatnot. We were open to like other cultures, more so than many others. So we did a lot of trading, and we pretty much accept people for who they are. Obviously, that's not always the case. You are going to get some people who aren't as friendly and open, but that's the same pretty much everywhere. But as a whole, we've always been sort of like pretty much arms wide open sort of thing, which is probably why the English thought they could just walk in and take over. Unfortunately for them, the Welsh are crazy. We are batshit insane, my guys. So some of the tales you might not have heard. I don't think anyone has really heard them. Even I haven't heard many of them before recently. But you know how the Scottish wear kilts and they don't wear anything underneath? And in order to shock their foes in battle, they would lift up their kilt and show off their goodies. The Welsh kind of took it one step further. We went into battle, I can't remember which battle it was, but we went into battle completely butt naked. No clothes whatsoever. And I'm going to say we won, but let's face it. If you went to a country with plans to take over, and the locals just showed up with no clothes on, would you want to mess with that? Because I know I wouldn't. So yeah, we're batshit insane, guys. We also use our landscape to the advantage. As I've said before, this place has a lot of hills and mountains and whatnot. So that kind of made it hard to really fully sort of like take over, which is why the Welsh people have fought so strongly, and not easily, but it is what part of the reason why we were able to hold on to as much culture as we could, because it's not easy to take over a country where majority of the place has hills and whatnot, and trying to get trebuchets and whatnot up those hills and mountains is nigh impossible. The traditional word for Wales is Cymru, and the basic translation just means countrymen or something similar to that. Anyway, we didn't really differentiate between like the different sects. We were just all either part of the same clan, or we just were not part of the same clan. We had our allies and our enemies and whatnot. So some famous people of Welsh descent would be... You'll probably even recognise some of these names because they are very famous. Although whether or not you would have known that they were Welsh or not is another question. But one of the most famous at the moment is Roald Dahl. He obviously wrote children's books. So we obviously had Tom Jones, the famous singer. He was also Welsh. And there were a few others as well. So some of the others obviously was Shirley Bassey. If you've heard of her, you have Charlotte Church. Some really famous bands you might have heard of would be the Manic Street Preachers, Stereophonics, obviously, and there's many, many more. But I don't know if any of them are as famous as those two. Yeah, those two are probably going to be the ones that you guys are more familiar with. They were obviously Welsh bands, very famous ones. So we have our own famous people here too. There are obviously many, many more famous people, but if I went down the list, even I don't know half of them, so I won't include them. But yeah, so Wales and its people just have a lot going for it, really. That's not to say like the Irish and the Scottish also don't, but I'm not really here to talk about them because I'm Welsh. So as you probably noticed, if you're not familiar with the different cultures of the United Kingdom and Britain, we are actually rather diverse. Yes, I also mean that in the skin colour variety, but just in general, like, I know I keep ragging on the Americans, and it's not their fault, but many Americans just assume that Wales is part of England, and it's not. They also don't realise how diverse we actually are, even just within our own people, not including like other cultures that have come to live here, of which there are many now. But yeah, many people think that, oh, you're British, oh, you all have the same culture, you're all this and that, but we're actually not. We're very different. And as a Welsh person, although I am not the type of Welsh person to go and fight someone over certain things, sports, I am still fiercely proud of my Welsh heritage, and hopefully you've all learnt something else about where I'm from and just Welsh things in general. And hopefully, as I don't believe I think I might be free Friday, aka tomorrow, depending on whether or not you guys see this now or later. I might try and stream. It depends on whether or not I can get everything done beforehand. So I won't make any promises, but I will try and stream then. If not, I will have to wait until next week when I don't have a million shifts. Because I am working Saturday, unfortunately, and Sunday I promised a not D&D session with my nephew. But next week, I believe I am free most of the weekend, and Monday and Wednesday. Unless things change, of course. Everything's viable to change these days. But I will try and get some streaming in done then. During my day off on Sunday after I've done the Not D&D campaign, maybe I'll try and stream something then, but it will be pretty late, so I probably won't see my regulars. Or I will just try and stream a game and do something else. We'll see. But for now, I am going to leave it here because this is probably going to be a longer video than I planned for. But hopefully I'll be able to get something done for you guys, regardless of what it is. But until then, I hope you enjoyed the video. Please like, comment and subscribe if you can or would like to. And I will hopefully see you in the next one. For now, p'randa, see you all soon, and take care. Bye.